live. It is Thirsty Smurfing Thursday. How's everybody doing? It's funny, JP. You cut to the 3-second countdown, and I completely forgot what we were doing that quick. All those supplements I'm taking are 100% not helping with short-term memory. Clearly, as I forgot that. How is everybody doing? Welcome to another episode. What are we doing tonight? I don't even know. I probably should have asked this in the
community questions.
Last 45 minutes that we've been doing this. Great. We are doing community questions. For those of you that have not ever tuned in for one of these episodes, this is going to be like one of the old school lawn care live help desk kind of things, right? So a few things that you can do. You can write us in at mail@thegrassfactor.tv. You can go to thegrassfactor.tv and submit it on the contact form, or you can just type it in the chat, and J Pink will compile the questions as they come in and throw them over to the chat and us. We will take incoming questions for a set period of time. We don't know how long just yet. And then at some point, we'll have to call it to finish answering all the questions, and then we can just figure out a time at which we are going in. Look, he's got a 45-minute timer on there. We will take questions for 45 minutes. It might take us an hour and a half to answer all of them. The other thing is that we are going to take these first come, first serve. So bear with us. It might take a hot minute to get to your question. The other thing that we want to get out there is that we are human, we are fallible, we make mistakes. Double and triple check everything that we say. Again, we're doing this live, and we've got questions coming in all over the place, right? We've got shit on. I literally have 4 monitors in front of me, right? I've got the guys right here. I have open community questions on this one. I have our private chat between us and the guys right here, and then over here, I've got Twitter going, so it is what it is. If you catch me looking up like this is me reading Twitter, and I'm not paying attention to whatever question came in. So there's my schedule. Anyway, I digress. We mess up. We may be thinking about something we're reading on this screen and answering your question, and a Freudian slip may cause us to use the wrong word or put the wrong emphasis on the right syllable. Who knows? Shit gets discombobulated sometimes. Double, triple check everything we say. Find someone else to co-sign our bullshit, or even ask us at a later time to clarify what we said, and we could probably give it a little more individualized attention, especially if you're a member of our Patreon. Patreon.com/Burnham Return. If you want to do that, you can hop over in our private Discord, hang out with a group of like-minded individuals. There is a prereq, though. We require people to submit an IQ test prior to signing up. So if you think you can pass that, then of course we'll let you in. I'm full of shit because my IQ is somewhere around room temperature. We'll call it lukewarm at best. So hey, look, 77, you're good enough. We got room for you. You're gonna be okay for the cost of an airport beer too. We'll get in there. Actually, probably half the price of an airport beer. So it is what it is. Real quick before we start answering these, Demay, Ray, how the hell are y'all doing, boys?
Let's check the stress meter here for today.
What are we at on the stress meter? Mine was low.
Let me see if I gotta get to where it tells me this. Oh, hang on. I have my Bluetooth disconnected. It's gonna have to calculate. We'll get back to that. I'll update the numbers here soon. Good.
I basically ignore it because given my high pulse rate, me being awake freaks Whoop out. Nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, I think
me being awake. I mean, it's so I basically ignore it.
You know what calmed me down though, Matt? And again, if you're not in our Discord, you wouldn't know any of this taking place. But what comforts me is high-speed car chases, driver, God bless him, out there gratifying old women, old elected officials, and the question I asked to Eric Sands, who's in our Patreon earlier, of what's more athletic, wakeboarding or peeing with a boner into somebody's mouth? Because they're both water sports.
Yeah.
I love it when I know I've hit the mark when I make Matt uncomfortable. I really do. Well, if I get Matt stressed or if I make Matt uncomfortable with a joke, I know I've hit the mark.
You got me there. I did not know what to say. I was trying my damnedest to be like, oh yeah, just play it cool. And then the further I got along into it, I was like, I can't play it cool anymore. I got nothing. I got nothing. That's it. We reached it. Phoenix Lawn Care said, I entered the weird part of YouTube, Ryan. Yeah, welcome. Welcome, Gerardo. We in the Discord, I colloquially call this either the stain in the underwear of internet lawn care, or the armpit of internet lawn care. I've got a lot of funny names that I use for it, but without a doubt, that is where we reside.
We make bad jokes
being
and we
said,
talk turf.
we do, without a doubt. Or we give a real concerted effort to make fun of our brothers in Christ, Driver and the Supernova, who I have in unreal infatuation for, because he has friends from Colombia, and I can't get over it. It's so fascinating to me that he has friends from Colombia. I'm just so impressed. Okay, that's going to go sideways quickly. Let's check out our first question. This is actually going to be a submitted question from Grass Thief, and he has sent us pictures of the recovery of his Bermuda grass, which we had debated that he probably had some dollar spot move into it, and so this is what we are left with. Now here is the caveat, right? Is that um, we're in late season, late daylight hours, right? Lower daylight hours. So your rate of recovery at this time is going to be pretty slow. I'm looking at the lesions on the second picture there. I don't know, guys.
That's a little bit of leaf spot, and I
Yeah.
see something else.
What
I
do
see
you see?
something else. Grass thief, please check your mower.
Mm.
And the reason why I'm asking you to check your mower is because I see fraying and pinching of the cuts of the grass.
Mm-hmm. Without
I
a
mean,
doubt.
this is how my eyes work. I have cataracts. I'm really nearsighted. However, if I kind of like move back and forth and focus, I can see this on grass. When the mower damages the grass when it's mowing it. And the other thing that I'm going to kind of look at and think about, Matt, is that doesn't look like dollar spot to me either. That looks more like some kind of a leaf spot type of a
It
condition.
does, and I was almost going to
Doesn't
say
it?
like almost like it's fighting a gray leaf spot. But if we go to the last picture here, let's take a look at this, because the last one makes it. Ooh, we have some animal excrement in the photo.
Rabbit turds.
Uh-huh.
Or
Rabbit
the
sauce.
sausage off a Domino's pizza.
We could be dealing with some chewy rutting around kind of things going on, right? So Grass Thief's in the chat right there. He's saying rabbits are eating it 24/7. So that very well could be exactly what's going on, right? And
Okay, if
you know,
they're
here's
chewing
the
and
thing: is that
digging,
if you go to any lawn in America and you take an up close picture, like where we were talking about seeing leaf spot on that, chances are you're going to find some grass blades that have some imperfection in it, right? It doesn't matter how pristine it is, what the time of year it is. If you dig in at that level of detail, you're going to find an imperfection. Doesn't mean you need to go grab a thing of azoxystrobin, drop a reverse mortgage to get more headway on the way. A couple of imperfections like that is nothing to melt down and die about. And again, when we talked to him last time, I'm going to toot our own horn here that we said, hey, look, it looks like it ran its course. Wouldn't worry about it too much. Let it do its thing and see what happens. And then this time, he manages to catch the fact that rabbits are gnawing all over it. And look, he's saying that the frayed edges are actually the rabbits that are just fucking chomping on it. There we go.
oh, okay.
Good eyes, Ray.
Okay. Yeah, and you know what, Grass Thief? If it is in fact rabbits eating, I have a remedy of sorts for that issue, and that remedy involves black pepper, hot English mustard, and the hottest chili peppers you can get your hands on.
There you go. A deterrent of deterrence there. If you could imagine being a little rabbit rooting around and catching you a schnoz full of cayenne pepper or black pepper, that would be a bad day. A little capsaicin to the brizane ain't good on
Actually,
no one.
I'm thinking more of when I made this little mix the last time to keep uh, feral animals out of the roses. I used Indian ghost chilies, Matt.
Ray chose violence today, and that's okay. Sometimes you have to. Our next one here is from Laura. It says, "Not sure what this is, so attaching a video. I'm watching this
Would you
myself
look
for the
at
first time."
that? I put triclopyr, and I swear I painted those green leaves with glyphosate. The grass died, but the weed grows on.
Uh-huh. Yep. So unfortunately, that is one of the things is a lot of times with glyphosate, it ain't a one and done. And if I'm guessing, I'm looking at this that this is a Kentucky bluegrass with a fescue clump growing in it. Maybe that's a Kentucky 31 fescue clump. Kentucky 31 is going to be a very hardy plant. Put it this way, you can get away with blanket spraying Kentucky 31 at a low rate of Roundup and use it as as a weed control. Who was it? Nasty Nate Alleman sent me research the other day from Proceed where they were running 4 ounces per acre of glyphosate on tall fescue for the purpose of POA control and measuring the rate of damage on tall fescue, and it was very acceptable, right?
Matt, I gotta stop you right there.
Yep, go ahead.
Because glyphosate at that 2 to 4 ounce per acre rate is a labeled treatment for application to industrial turf and roadsides for the purposes of 1, growth regulation, and 2, weed control. It is a labeled application in actual practice. However, it is not normally brought into the space of application to fine turf or in landscape turf. It's normally a vegetation management type application. So I have heard of doing low rate glyphosate. In fact, instead of string trimming areas, I will use low rate glyphosate as a growth inhibitor and weed control. I'll do it. So this is not like earth shattering to me. However, if somebody has Kentucky 31 or clumping fescue, unfortunately, what used to be labeled for selective control of that clumping fescue is completely off the market because it was such a dangerous product to apply. Right, Matt? And you remember it because that was called Lesco TFC, also known as
I was trying to
Corsair.
think of an acronym for it. Yeah.
Tall
Good
fescue
old
control.
Riverdale Corsair.
Yeah, and in fact, Matt,
Got a bottle
I
out in the garage.
no, in
Yeah,
fact,
I do
I had the opportunity to use some Riverdale Corsair, and I actually liked it. However, kept it far away from any kind of trees, shrubs, or hedges because I knew.
You got to do that. Don't make that mistake. Point being with all this, Laura, is that tall fescue is going to be more tolerant than you probably give it attention for. Than you give it credit for to glyphosate. That being said, also when you paint the leaves, if you have to paint the entirety of the leaf, right? So tip to tip, right? So from the crown of the plant. up to the tip. And I'm not saying you didn't do that, but I'm saying you may have missed 3 or 4 leaves. And that's why you're seeing regrowth from the leaves you missed. That being said, there is still a real reality. Like I have made a lot of glyphosate applications to a tall fescue yard with the intent of killing it, and I do see a little bit of regrowth before it ends up finally dying. You might experience in this example, you may not. I don't know if it were me, and why you do have a little bit of time left, especially since glyphosate is going to be seed safe. I would go ahead and just paint the leaves again, and then get out there the next morning, scuff the surface a little bit, drop you your Kentucky bluegrass seed or your whatever tall fescue seed you want to go back in place with, because I'm fairly certain that's Kentucky 31, and then you'll be good to go. And you
Yeah.
got
I
got
see
nothing
one
to
more
worry
thing.
about.
I see
What's
one
that?
more thing. You know when people make paint-on applications of glyphosate?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the mistake. They make that paint-on application with the same concentration that they normally use for spot spraying. You
Uh-huh.
cannot do that. You really cannot do that, because I know whenever I make one of those targeted selective paint-on or wipe-on type applications, I'm following the instructions for a wick or wiper type application. And you know what they tell you to do? Make up 1 part of glyphosate concentrate to 3 parts of water, and then you use that solution to just directly apply to individual weeds via some kind of a brush or wiper type application device. Because when you make like a 1% solution and then you just try to paint weed leaves with that 1% solution, that really isn't applying enough to kill it. Because, Matt, I've done wipe on applications with that ultra concentrated 1 part to 3 part water glyphosate, and I've destroyed grassy weeds that were literally like 5 feet tall. Just passing it over, in 2 directions, and then coming back to it 2 weeks later, the thing is crispy. It's gone. So I
And
suspect
if
that
you're
looks to me like that didn't get enough. It honestly didn't get enough, I don't think.
if you're doing the math on that, 1 part glyphosate to 3 parts water, that's a 25% solution, right? So
Mm.
again, we're not talking about 2 ounces in a gallon, dip your paintbrush in it and wipe it on the leaves kind of situation.
No. No. Not at all.
Looney, our Canadian friend up north, what's up, bud? Says there is a new fertilizer coating plant that is open in Canada this week, which states they're using Purcell's next generation control release fertilizer. Anyone know what the new coating is? Yes, it is not a new coating. Okay, so this is an epoxy, and it's a 2 part. All right, they have 2, right? They have one that is going to also include a wax that would be more akin to like an Osmocote or Surf Coat, and then they have another which is just a polymer, a true polymer catalyst reaction on the granule itself. And if I recall correctly, Purcell's latest one is going to be in that epoxy space, right? So typically what you do is you take your urea base, you use some sort of polyol as like an initial coating, right? And then you spray in some sort of catalyst reaction, coat it, and then you continue to layer it on until you reach your duration level you're looking for, right? So we'll say like 2 coats is going to give you 45 days. 4 coats is going to give you 60 days. 6 coats plus a sprinkle of paraffin wax or whatever wax of choice you use is going to give you your 120 day, right? Um, so that is what that is, and they're just licensing probably the engineering from Purcell as well as the provider of the coatings, right? And you got to think these polymer producers are going to come from likely 2 places, either Dow DuPont or BASF, right? And that's pretty much the only two that you're going to find that are going to provide on met scale for this industry, right? In the past, you saw more polyvinyl that was used, so PVC, that kind of plastic. But of course, looking for cheaper and cheaper polymers that are going to give you the same level of hardness, flowability, shelf stability, diffusion rate, all that fun stuff, right? And if I recall, if I was just loony. If you scroll up in Dirty Deeds, I was just talking. I think I actually put the patent from Purcell in Dirty Deeds. That is their latest patent that they are licensing to this Canadian slow release coating facility. There's not a ton of them, and you've got Purcell that does it. You've got Harrell's that does it. You have Coke that does it, and that's right. They're all in the same vicinity, actually on the same park, same corporate campus in Sylacauga, Alabama. They are all right there on the same spot, same rail spur. I mean, literally lined up right next to each other. All right, so you can see that basically they're taking one rail load, keep logistics low, right? They're basically partnering on all that. Then you have Knox Fertilizer Company up in Knox, Indiana, that does it as well. And I want to say Knox actually does a lot of work for like Nutrien too, if I recall correctly. I may have completely made that up, but a lot of like the ESN stuff from Nutrien, which is going to be more on the ag space, is coming from Knox as well. I believe that is going to be um, in the vinyl space, the PVC space. So yeah, hope that helps. Butcher just doubled his dose of quercetin. Brent said germination rates on a seed label factors, grass factor. I don't. Oh, germination rates on a seed label. So I guess he's talking about when you see like 85%, 90% germination rates. And if what I'm guessing here is that if you have 85%, 17 out of 20 seeds is their guaranteed minimum of what will germinate. Or am I smoking crack on that? No, that would be my guess.
Say that again.
8.5 out of 10. If it's an 85%, that would be 8.5 out of 10. So 17 out of 20, just to keep it. I don't think you're going to get a seed to half germinate.
All right. Let me pull up a seed tag here real quick.
I would say 85 is what I see most. 90 is what I see most common, unless it's like a weird cultivar. Then I might see like 85, something like that.
Let's see here. We'll do this here. Hang on. Let me pull one in here. I should have been
You're all good.
prepared. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, I got people.
Here we go.
All right.
Germination
So,
percentage.
yeah. So germination percentage. The other thing that you need to consider too on this label is pure live seed, right? So if we have 90% germination, in this case, we've got 0.65% inert matter, right? So 100, and that's 0.065%. So that's going to be 0.65. So we have 99.35% pure live seed or pure seed in here. Okay. And if I multiply that times the 90% germination rate, okay, that means that 89.415% of this seed is actually live. So if you're doing a seed calculation, a lot of times you'll see seed expressed just as, hey, tall fescue, 8 pounds per thousand, right? And if you have a bag that tests at 85% instead of 90%, that could be a big difference in terms of, just a few pounds, but it could be a few pounds difference on a per thousand or per acre basis, right? So if you want to seed correctly, use the pure live seed calculation. So again, whatever your numbers are down here for inert, weed, and other crop, go ahead and subtract those from 100, multiply that number as a whole integer times your germination percentage, and that'll give you the amount of pure live seed, PLS, you'll see it abbreviated as, and that will give you a more accurate seed rate. There you go.
And I will say right here, this blend of seed you see with the Avenger, Firecracker, Spider LS, Raptor 3,
Pretty good.
this is actually a great seed. I would spread
See what
this
see what
all
the
day
title of the
long.
seed is.
The best grass seed blend. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not going to argue with that. That is a badass blend of some really top performers from Mountain View Seeds. I'll just say that. Dan the Lawman said, I love the three gents on the screen and the one behind the scenes. Shout out to you, Jay Slink there. Jay Holly said, Zoysia, normal pH, low sulfur. Should I care? Uh, yeah. Yeah. Sulfur is the second to nitrogen in terms of the most important in color response. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
would absolutely say that's important. Now, it is not as complex to raise your sulfur levels as you're going to think. That doesn't mean go apply elemental sulfur. That doesn't mean you got to go get sulfuric acid and make an application. If you apply a 15015 from urea and potassium sulfate, sulfate being a soluble sulfur, will raise your soil sulfate levels. Ferrous sulfate, manganese sulfate, zinc sulfate, ammonium sulfate. If it ends in sulfate, it will raise the sulfate levels of your soil. You don't have to apply sulfur. Okay. Even though it's measuring your sulfur levels on your soil test, really what you're looking to apply is sulfate.
Any sulfate fertilizer, and if his pH is where it is, he's literally a good candidate to apply his nitrogen as ammonium sulfate. And here's, observationally talking about zoysia grass and nitrogen, Matt. That is where I see zoysia reacting to being fertilized by urea. And when you fertilize zoysia with urea, a lot of times that zoysia turns plasticky yellow. It's not a good look. Okay, it's not a very good look. I mean, on the other hand, you throw it 1/10 to 2/10 of a pound of ammonium sulfate, that grass is green. No questions asked.
Yeah, there's very few instances of people that are going to be like, yeah, I applied ammonium sulfate and I just was not really impressed with the response I got. Chances are there's some other outside factor there that would be contributing. to that.
Okay, the people that have
Difficult.
problems or they don't get a positive response from AMS, chances are those are the people that are dealing with extremely acidic soil.
Mhm.
And the ammonium sulfate then becomes detrimental because it's further lowering their soil pH. But then for the majority of people where their soil pH is over 6, and they're also low on sulfur, AMS becomes absolutely an asset to them. It becomes an asset versus urea. Now, I understand the argument for urea is, come on, that is 4600. But let's dissect what's in urea. And remembering my chemistry, urea is simply carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. That's all that's in urea. And you know what's missing from that urea? Sulfur. And sulfur is actually becoming a very important element because, the EPA's Clean Air Act? I think the EPA's Clean Air Act has probably worked a little bit better than intended. Because in times past, there used to be a lot of sulfur that would come back down in rain and snow. But
Oh, my thunder.
even our friend Travis Shaddix, on one of his shows, he highlighted the fact that because of the Clean Air Act, sulfur is no longer present in precipitation because there's a rule concerning fossil fuel burning power plants and industrial facilities in that they are not allowed to emit sulfur into the atmosphere. So that source of sulfur is gone. So therefore, if you are sulfur deficient, you are going to need to provide sulfur via your fertilizer program.
There it is. Also, another name for urea, by the way, if anybody's playing around in the chemistry space, is a carbamide. Carbamide is another name for urea. You'll tend to pull it up more of the structure there of that molecule. The auditor said, the auditor makes me nervous. Do you need to use a starter fertilizer after aerating? I don't have my fertilizer license yet, but I mow and want to offer aerating and overseeding. No, you do not need to apply a starter fertilizer. Needs and wants are two totally different things. It's the same reason weeds germinate in lawns. Did you apply a starter fertilizer in order for a lawn to become property line to property line full of crabgrass? Chances are no. Ryan, what is I steal this phrase from you all the time, and I use it especially when I'm talking to ag guys that cannot wrap their mind around turf grass, and you refer to
Sister
turf
fuckers?
grass, especially compared to ag.
I was going to say I probably wouldn't.
What kind of plant? It is a
poverty plant. I call it a poverty plant.
Poverty plant. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love stealing that from Ryan because it's such an accurate statement. Like, need a starter fertilizer? Hell no. How many
grass was growing just fine on 6 continents before starter fertilizer came around?
Just saying. Can you eke out a little bit more performance with starter fertilizer, assuming you need the phosphorus? Chances are you can. Is it going to be the difference between your grass surviving and dying?
Okay.
Anybody here that does lawns for a living can tell you about spilling a bag of seed, a handful of seed in the back of their truck bed, and it germinating and growing in the back of their truck bed.
Okay. I also got to stop this, viewer in that if you're talking about a lawn that you're even aerating, you know what my guess is? This is a lawn that is also mulch mowed, rough cut, and the clippings not taken away. So the chances of phosphorus becoming a limiting factor are slim to none. Because, guys, do you know the only time I see phosphorus issues on turf grass or in lawns is here in Hawaii, where every single fucking grass clipping is picked up at every mowing. That's the only time I see phosphorus issues. But on a normally maintained lawn, no. It doesn't happen. It's rare.
Yep.
I mean, it's very rare. I mean,
I would not sweat it all. And I'll get the auditor. Let me clue you in on another thing here. Is that you don't even have to aerate it. It's a secret. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. They will not be accepting of you. They will not invite you to the barbecue. They will ridicule you. They'll make fun of you. They'll steal your shoes in the middle of the night. But you don't even have to aerate to germinate grass.
Okay.
It's fascinating.
Okay, auditor, guess how many times I've aerated a lawn?
0.0.
0.0. I mean, I actually
I wish
did
I could
it.
say the same. I've
No,
aerated.
I actually did it one time about 20 years ago, Matt. I did it. And talk about a freaking shit show. Because it brought up cat turd sized plugs of sticky mud that I then had to rake up and remove. And even then, I don't think that process made a lick of difference to that lawn versus properly addressing pH and nutrients in that turf. And you know what that turf was? That was zoysia grass mowed at a 1/2 inch. So it's very high level maintenance turf.
There you go. I'll tell you this, the auditor, where you live is going to dictate whether or not you should aerate, right? Like it is going, if you live in an area like Ryan DeMay does, or where I live, and you sell your lawn care program as like, hell no, I ain't aerating shit. Chances are you're not going to pick up a whole lot of business, right? Because it is a cultural thing that you get out there and aerate, right? Maybe after they've been a customer for a year or two, then you can talk them down off the ledge, right? But like marketing
Oh, secret.
yourself as like, these assholes around here are jackasses and they don't know what they're doing. People will literally call you a dumbass and then hang up.
Or
It
kick you out of
it
their lawn care
happens.
Facebook group.
Or that is possible too. In fact, you could say much less than that, as if you don't even need to liquid aerate. You can just sow seed and it will grow, and they will for sure ban you for that. Or you could say liquid aeration is a scam, and then they will threaten you with you self deleting, which was the strangest of all things. Like, we need to get Matt out of here because we're afraid he is going to hero. It's an online joke for a word. I can't use that word on stream anyway. If y'all didn't know,
Really?
that is a bad word to say. Yeah. And I'll tell a story off the air about how I learned that the hard way. Anyway, does the next one here from Jay Rimerson Jr. is, does Ivor beep control dollar spot? Not that I'm aware of. If you have intestinal worms, I know it's good for that, and I will end the conversation there because I was just talking about things that will get us kicked off YouTube, and that is not a fight I want to fight right now about that drug. But I'll tell you this, is that I will down the fact that is not a drug that was designed purely for horses. That shit fucking pisses me off. Wilson
Yeah.
Miranda said, I'm
Mhm.
applying ammonium sulfate and elemental sulfur to drop pH. It was at 8.45. Can sulfates get high enough to be harmful? If yes, would potassium nitrate and potassium, what is KH2PO4? Potassium phosphate be
Phosphate,
a good
yep.
sprayable alternative to
MKP, yeah.
not raise SO4? Okay. So sulfates, no, are not going to be high enough to become harmful. Sulfur can become harmful at a certain point. Chances are it's going to be difficult for you to reach that, Wilson Miranda, especially this time of year, because all right, elemental sulfur is going to react with through a process within the soil and become a sulfuric acid. Right, you're going to pick up some hydrogen there. That's going to become sulfuric acid. Yes, sulfuric acid at certain concentrations can become toxic. We have seen Aldo drop the deflector shield without closing the third hole on a perimeter pass, and we're talking about probably an 8.4 level. I mean, it was high. I remember he had a super high pH. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was as high as hell. And so it called for a renovation and incorporating a metric shit ton of elemental sulfur in order to bring that back into check. And it did, but it was so much at one time and not enough even distribution there, because the concentration of dropping the deflector shield without closing the third hole on the edge, that it actually became phytotoxic even at a later point when he was trying to establish ryegrass temporarily. So yes, that is possible. General recommendations, boys, where would y'all be at with elemental sulfur applications? How many applications a year? And at what rate for each application?
Ooh, it depends. It totally depends, Matt, because I have two sets of recommendations. One set is for highly maintained and irrigated turf. The other set of recommendations is the one that everybody's more familiar with, for minimally maintained, non-irrigated turf. And Ryan, I think you know what I mean on that second, right? Because when talking about turf that's on irrigation, I'm not uncomfortable about applying 5 pounds per 1,000 square foot per month of growing season to irrigated turf. However, if we're talking about non-irrigated turf, you only can do 5 pounds once in spring, once in fall, and in reality, 5 pounds in spring and 5 pounds in fall ain't enough to make a difference, actually. So, which which one are you? Because the other thing that came to mind when he was asking about sulfates, Matt.
Hmm.
Sulfates in highly irrigated soils tend not to be toxic because sulfates are a readily leachable anion.
Yep.
Yep.
It's a
Water
salt.
water gets rid of it so fast that the only time I can imagine sulfates becoming an issue, and I have actually seen this happen, after acidifying soil, is if somebody is not irrigating enough. Then the sulfates build up to the point where they become toxic. But if somebody is
even on
irrigating
a soil test, like how high would that have to be? Are we talking like 200 parts per million, 250, 400 parts per million?
500,
It is gonna
Matt,
be.
500
Jeez.
ppm. Yeah, you got to go 500. But then
Wilson,
the only way to
you're not gonna hit 500 parts per million in your lawn. Just saying.
not if you're watering, not if you're if
Mhm.
you're watering sufficiently. Because here's the other key part of addressing soil pH and excessive calcium and magnesium and sodium. Water is your best friend.
Yep.
That's your best friend
Provided it's
because
well, that's
provided
also tricky. Go ahead. Go ahead.
water can also be your worst enemy if you are drawing that water from a well that is full of calcium and magnesium carbonate and bicarbonate. Then that water becomes your frenemy. But then if you're drawing from a well that is like that, then your recourse is to directly acidify that irrigation water. Because I got a funny phone call from somebody last night, Matt.
They did a water quality test, and
No. This
oh,
is our friend Zach in Ogden, Utah.
yeah,
Zach. Yeah. Okay.
Western
Zach was
U.S.
asked.
boys had got some funny water out there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Zach was asking me about suitable dosatron type injectors for handling that product called Infuric.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I told Mr. Zach is, if you're going to be pumping Infuric, I want you to use that special version of the dosatron that uses this polymer body called PVDF. And PVDF is another name for acid resistant fluoropolymer versus the blue nylon bodied dosatron injectors, because nylon and acids tend not to play well together. Like, I have seen nylon catch fire when in contact with concentrated acids. So I told Zach, go look for that injector with the, not the blue body, but the opaque white body that looks almost like Teflon. There.
Yeah. Check your irrigation water. You can, chances are, if you're pulling from a municipality, you can get a water quality report off their website. If not, if you're pulling from a well, get it tested. It can give you a lot of information. Eric Sands said, continuing with my fertilizer polymer rabbit hole, and Eric Sands was, deep in the rabbit hole of polymer coatings today in Dirty Deeds. Looney, that's why I was telling you to check that out, because that's why we were going over patents in there earlier today. Uh, any good resources out there for environmental conditions affecting release rates of various release mechanisms? Here's the thing with polymer coatings, even polymerized nitrogen sources that are like complexes, you're only going to get two factors that affect it: soil moisture content and temperature. That's it. There's nothing else, right? You've got the microbial activity piece on like urea form or nitroform or methylene urea, urea triazone. But again, if it's microbially mineralized, that's still a function of soil temperature and moisture, right? So you're not going to get away from it really beyond that. Maybe Osmocote would be the only other thing, but Osmocote is a damn nursery fertilizer that you're not typically going to apply to lawns. But even then, I still think you're relying on diffusion, and it would be a function of
Time's
heat
up. It's
and
over.
moisture levels. That's it for
Heat
the
and moisture
questions we're taking in, but we still have a shitload to answer.
Yes.
Yeah, because like the polyon or the polyol coat type fertilizers, Matt, those all rely on what I tried to explain to Eric is osmotic diffusion.
Mm-hmm.
The urea diffuses through that coating, and do you know what is driving the rate of osmotic diffusion in that case? Temperature. The warmer it is, the more osmotic pressure is achieved, and the faster that urea pumps back out of that coating, back into the soil. So having said that,
Go ahead.
that means that in real life conditions, most polymer coat type fertilizers, as is used in turf care, at best, you can coat them to last 45 days. At best.
I'd say you can get away longer than that.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe not in Hawaii.
But if you're
45 days in
hitting-
Hawaii,
yeah,
I'd believe
in
that.
Hawaii, that's going to be tough. Yeah, 45 days in where I live in the spring,
Sheboygan.
totally doable. In Canada, Ohio, where DeMay lives, is you could probably get 360 days up there. I tease. JPink, if you can zoom in on this picture, this is what's left over after the diffusion, osmotic diffusion that we were talking about, right? So this is a fertilizer granule that was polymer coated, and all of the water made its way in, dissolved the urea, and then made its way back out. And you're left with this deflated balloon looking spent pea here of sorts.
Yeah, it's just a shell. It's just a plastic shell. And another question that I got is, and this is something I'm thinking about, is, okay, what happens to this plastic? And, my only conclusion is, guess what, guys?
Nothing.
No, this plastic becomes part of the stew of microplastics in our environment. There's a thought for you. There's a thought for you all, because this plastic is literally like a polyurethane type material that further breaks down into smaller particles in time.
And this is Harrell's, and so this actually is more akin to a polyurethane that you're seeing right here, that kind of granule.
Yep.
Yeah, and that if your concern is it biodegradable, look, people are rapidly working on figuring out the biodegradable control release fertilizer thing via polymer coating, and it is a slow grind to try and get the same levels of efficacy. Now, that being said, IBDU, nitroform, methylenurea, triazonurea, all of those are going to be microbially mineralized. The caveat to that is that they typically don't provide the same peak of color response. That, of course, can be solved with a little bit of a foliar application at a later date to bring you up to peak, right? But for whatever reason, that rate of release is just so squirrely of sorts that you don't any kind of color response chart that you look at with triazonurea, methylenurea, all of them, nitroform, you don't get that same gradient upward of color response. It's a much slower, softer trajectory that you end up seeing, and so it may require you to get out there and give it just a little bit of a bump to get it up to your color peak, and then let uh, your polymerized urea continue from that peak at that point forward, if that makes sense. I guess that makes sense, kind of. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it'll work.
Michael Pedroza says lawn is killed off for fall renovation in 2 weeks. I'm finding lots of vole or gopher activity. Walking on the lawn feels like fluffy pillows. Any idea for treatment and prevention? Everybody's going to tell you that you got grub worms, right? Here's the thing: is that before you go making grub applications, scout first. Do a little digging. Are you finding 7 grubs per square foot type of density that would warrant making that kind of application? No. Okay. Here's the thing: is that guess what? Grub worms are not the only subsurface insects that these animals eat. It could be earthworms. It could be crickets. It could any kind of subsurface, subterranean, temporary or not. It could be at the surface. Yep. That are going to eat it all.
Yeah. Anything. And so
what would you do, Ray?
What I would do is, instead of thinking that I'm going to impose insect Chernobyl, if I had animals digging around in the lawn, I'd be looking to that mix of ghost chilies, mustard, and black pepper instead. I mean, I'd be going there.
There's talprid that you can use as well too, which is a bait. Just be careful with that, because remember, if it's designed to kill a mammal, we are mammals. Your house pets are mammals. It's not something you approach lightly, right? There needs to be a strategy at play. PPE needs to be followed. There's very specific instruction labels on how to handle the material in order to minimize scent that gets transferred over to it. It's a thing.
I got another
right?
No, I got another precaution should somebody contemplate applying talprid, Matt. And you know what that is?
What's that?
You got to make fucking sure that the family cat or the family dog does not find an animal poisoned by that talprid bait. I mean, you got to just make sure, because talprid, that's an example of the last anticoagulant baits that I know of that are registered and allowed for application in residential areas. Because EPA made a big deal about restricting and limiting use of anticoagulant rodent baits in residential areas because of this secondary poisoning of the family dog and cat. So just be careful with that. And me personally, that is why I'm really reluctant to go to poison baits for, undesired rodents. I'm really reluctant.
Definitely something to keep in the back of your head. That is nothing to play around with. Sean said, when I first established parts of my lawn, I made the mistake of watering too frequently once established and have shallow roots. Is this something I can fix with proper watering? Yeah. Just withhold the water from it. Let it get to that point where you're starting to see it needle. It won't, and then reintroduce your water. Let it get to that point where it starts. It will correct really easily.
It's correctable. Easily correct.
Ryan,
Amazing.
I'll ask you because you live in an aeration season. Is this one of those instances where you'd go rent an aerator for a weekend and plug a bunch of holes in it, or would you just scale back the water? What would be your approach?
Just scale back the water first. It's easier to control, easier to have a good result, and uh, vet that out first if you even have a need to aerify.
Would
my take.
you go get a bunch of azomite? What is the
Ecolite?
what is the shit I'm thinking of? No, as a oh, it's
Azomite.
a damn. Is it azomite?
Zeolite.
As
Zeolite?
a
Zeolite.
Zeolite.
Would you go get a
Yeah.
bunch of zeolite and apply that? What about some green sand?
Maybe like
Oh,
a
man.
maybe like a calcined clay or a porous ceramic, perhaps. I mean,
Turf
kind of
face.
lower soil.
Turf
little
face.
turf?
Yeah, turfus. Yeah,
Little
turfus. Yeah,
turfus?
you can do turfus.
Turface.
Yeah,
Turface.
field
Would
effect-
you
yeah.
would you bury it in carbon pro G?
Yeah. I mean, I guess get on what are we number 6 in Bulgaria, right?
Yeah, well, that was until we got canceled. I think we may have been up to number 2. I'm gonna pretend like we were at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, just get an
I'll lie
account
and tell you we were
on
at number 2, dude.
OnlyFans or Chatterbait Bulgaria, and make as much money as I can so I can afford all that goddamn Carbon Pro G. Ron,
Bulgarian OnlyFans brought to you live here on the Grass Factor.
listen, those chicks would dig guys like you and me, big, strapping, hairy men. Give me a bottle of Stoli. We'll fit the part. We can play. Ray,
Anything, Ryan?
eh,
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But then
What-
you
listen-
know me.
Go ahead.
I won't stop trying for my Eastern European sugar mama either, because look at ladies. I love my sauerkraut and sausage and potatoes. Okay, I'm one of those guys. So there.
Ray needs a oh my god, he needs a lady from Poland. And Ray, do I have the single lady for you? Another one of Asami's friends. My goodness, I got it all figured out. We're just waiting on you to move here, Ray. I'm telling you. We talked about this offline. I'm telling you, dude. Asami is the queen of matchmaking.
Matchmaker.
John P said, "Why do I have all the goddamn chinch bugs?" Great question. I wish I knew the answer.
Was John in like Rhode Island?
He's up north,
Massachusetts?
Connecticut,
Oh,
Connect 4.
Yeah, John, Lushy, and Brent. I mean, they're having they're having chinch bug nightmares because the other day I was talking to Lushy, and honestly, he's warming up to the idea of cutting down these chinch bug lawns with what's that? Merit, Dialox, and permethrin. Yikes.
Damn.
Because I guess the chinch bug is that terrible. And imagine this now, Matt. A year ago, Lushy thought I was being extra, combining Dialox and Merit together and sending that. He thought I was being nuts. But you will do that when you have terrible chinch bug. That will go on the table, right? I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
when required, then sometimes you got to. Tony Bender is he is still drinking since last Thursday. I'm just assuming based on his last name there. I completely made it up, Tony. I doubt you're on a bender. It was a poor joke. I apologize.
Spino's turf.
Surfactants is the O2YS natural adjuvant versus a standard 90-10. And should you buffer pH with a 90-10 to 5 or below to enhance uptake of foliar applications? Here's the thing: is that O2YS is going to be it is a natural adjuvant that is derived from yucca, I do believe, which is a very effective surfactant, without a doubt. Saponin content, great surfactants, and then what they recommend is buffering the pH down. Here's the thing: is that 99% of the time, buffering your pH, whether you're using a surfactant or not, is going to be beneficial. Okay. You ha- I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. If I pull a glass of water out of my sink right now and do a pH test on it, I'm probably a TDS of like 160, and the pH is going to be somewhere between a 7.7 and an 8, right? So, in that instance, if I'm mixing an herbicide in that tank mix, with or without a surfactant, yeah, I should be using a surfactant. I want to make that clear. I should be using one, but regardless, at the bare minimum, I should be modifying the pH of that tank. Now, do you have to get tricky with it? Chances are you could throw some ammonium sulfate in it. That's going to be an adequate buffer. You're not going to get it to 5 or below with ammonium sulfate. There's other things out there that you can do to it. There's a whole litany of different things.
Here's the
Uh,
thing about
uh,
buffering pH, Matt, that you got to
Mhm.
keep in mind is that once you get your pH below 5, conversely, terrible things can happen because then your molecule may be subject to this phenomena called acid hydrolysis
Mm.
rather than alkaline hydrolysis. So,
alkaline
you
hydrolysis is
know,
bad. Acid hydrolysis is bad.
and so that is why, when you said ammonium sulfate or even ammonium phosphate, I'm a fan of those kind of buffers because no matter what you do with them, they ceiling at 5.5, right, Nat? That's where they stop. And so there's no chance that you're going to create a condition where you acid hydrolyze your herbicide or your fungicide. However, this whole deal about buffering tank mixes, it also depends on what you're actually applying because I can think of a specific instance where you don't want to acidify your tank mix. I can think of a very specific instance where you don't do it.
Uh, tri- Trifloxysulfuron.
Trifloxysulfuron, halosulfuron, imazosulfuron, sulfosulfuron, metsulfuron, all of and certainty and Celsius and
Sulfosylfuron.
Revolver. Yeah, all those
Sulfuron.
herbicides are
In
yeah,
carbazone
all those
form.
herbicides
Sorry.
are known as sulfonylurea herbicides, and in most cases, if you look at that labeling, it'll say avoid combining with acid forming materials. Don't do it. And the reason why you don't do it is because sulfonylurea herbicides, number one, they're subject to acid hydrolysis, and that acid hydrolysis happens at, 6 even. Second issue is that sulfonylurea herbicide, what will happen is that in an acidic solution, the active ingredient is far less soluble in the water that is used to make up the tank mix. And then when it's less soluble in the water, that then inhibits uptake and absorption of that sulfonylurea by the weed. So you're basically compromising your weed control. So be super careful about putting in acidic materials with your tank mix. Read your label before you do it. Read your label.
Novel idea.
That's my best advice. Yeah. Read your
some
label
people.
first.
Amazing. Next one here, we have Lawn Radiance, who said these cooler late summer fall days with temps that are dropping at 19 to the 50s and 40s. Bermuda's producing seed heads. Is this a decrease of daylight and cooler temps? You got to think it's a plant. It's beginning to shut down. What do things do? It was kind of a last ditch effort of freaking out. Well, I want to reproduce, right? And so throwing off seed heads as a physiological response to detecting that things are happening that is abnormal is pretty normal. And then of course, spring, you get increased sunlight exposure. Everybody's excited. What happens to all the animals when they are in nature, and you begin getting longer daylight hours. What is that season? They begin to go into heat and mate, right? It's funny what happens to the, biology, whether it be plant or human, in response to sunlight exposure, right? One is going to be a signal to mate and reproduce. The other one is going to be a last ditch effort to try to survive and reproduce, right? So, yeah, totally normal. You're going to be okay. Jason Smurfin Trailer, our big bald headed, red bearded bastard of Texas. You have way too much hair, Demay. I'll tell you that. I would give you that title, but you have way too much hair. Trailer has exactly 0.0 on the top of his head. I think
Oh,
I'm
boy.
going to be there faster than you will too, Demay. So I don't know. We're in the race for it. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm getting there. If you can see my scalp pretty good underneath what is remaining. It is what it is. I digress. What is the best time? The best time is going to be the furthest time from your last fertilizer application. So for you, winter, February timeframe, you haven't applied fertilizer for a long time. You're as depleted as you're going to be before you start growing again. That is a great time to do it because that's actually giving you as close to a baseline of your actual what resides in your soil nutrient levels that you could possibly have. Don't order a soil savvy kit. Don't order one of those. What is the other one? A soil
My
mastery
soil.
kit.
My soil, yeah.
Don't do
Yeah.
that. And Trailer, I know you know this, but get a real test done. TAMU does good tests down there in Texas, and yeah, it'll give you some good data, but not the ion exchange resin. How much does a septic tank change your fertilizer program? Man, if you have your leach field marked to a T and you can somehow manage to keep your leach field from receiving fertilizer, great. The world is your oyster. You are an incredible human being for being able to figure that out. If you don't have it marked at all times and you can't keep fertilizer off of it, then yeah, you might have some dark green spots at certain times of year. You may even have burned up grass at other times of the year. It's just kind of the nature of having a drain field and a septic tank. I don't really think there's going to be a whole lot you can do. Again, if you can keep the fertilizer off of it, great, because you're going to be pumping a lot of ammonia and shit out of your drain field. It's just the nature of it. If you can mitigate that by keeping it off, great. If not, great. Good luck with that, by the way. I feel like every time I have an idea of where my drain field is, I find out there's actually more of it than what I thought. Or you can block it off and just let your septic tank back up and create a whole host of problems indoors for you. Had that happen at my old house. Eric Sands, is solubility important for plant availability? How likely is there some loss to reacting with something else and making it unavailable? And this is why pH is important. Yes, and yes, to an extent.
Yes.
Right. Again, we talked about turfgrass being a poverty plant. What's great about turfgrass as compared to some like crops, traditional crop production, so vegetables, right, is that we get to take advantage of root exudates, and turfgrasses typically have very active root exudates, right? Meaning that if insoluble compounds do form, say like phosphorus that you apply reacts with calcium in your soil and produces an insoluble calcium phosphate, technically that phosphate is insoluble, unplant available at that point. However, because we do have root exudates, and this is going to be acids, organic acids that are emitted by the tips of adventitious roots in exchange for the solubilizing of that calcium phosphate molecule into a usable soluble form of phosphorus. So the only time that I would say that it's like significantly important in this regard, Eric Sands, would be like if you are applying iron to elicit as much of a color response as possible. You want that iron soluble. But you can also apply it foliarly to get it into the plant and not worry so much about the interaction that happens in the soil, because the majority of the response you're going to get is a byproduct of what gets absorbed through the leaf tissue, right? So this unavailable thing that you hear a lot on the YouTube and internet forums and all that shit when it comes to turf grass specifically is on a scale of 1 to bullshit, off the fucking charts on bullshit, right? Now, again,
It's total crap. Yeah.
if you think you're going to elicit a blue-green yard by applying iron oxide to your grass and your soil pH is 7.2, then that is off the charts on the bullshit scale, right? Iron sucrate,
Mhm.
iron humate, iron phosphate, you name it. If it's an insoluble iron source and you think you're going to turn grass blue, you're literally lying to yourself. Don't do it. But if you're applying phosphorus or potassium that becomes insoluble for whatever reason, should you panic and freak out that you lost that nutrient? No, the grass is going to find a way to take it up. And you know what is going to be the primary driver of root exudation? Applying nitrogen. So you apply nitrogen, it's amazing. The plant literally takes care of the rest through the relationship between the root system and the soil to solubilize that and make it go back up.
I can
Crazy.
think of something even more important than nitrogen, Matt.
Hmm.
I can think of something even more important. Water.
Oh, yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
Water is the
Water, sunlight,
fact,
nitrogen.
and water, sunlight, and nutrients. In that order, and provided you have sufficient water. I've seen grass literally mine all available NP and K out of the soil. I've seen grass do that. And so you're thinking, oh, but this soil is terrible. It's compacted. It doesn't have 5% organic matter. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have this. Don't worry about it, because grass is what's called a poverty plant. And the only time I ever become concerned about what is or is not in soil is when nutrients become so deficient that even the turf grass stops growing and the only thing that's actually growing are the weeds. Then I become concerned. And Matt and Ryan, here in Hawaii, I literally see instances where the soil is so stripped and depleted, the only things that grows are the weeds that have bigger roots than the turf grass. I have seen that happen. So it's not that far-fetched.
Yeah. Go ahead, Demay. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off.
No.
You go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
No, you go ahead.
No, I've seen that situation play out, and over for especially at establishment where people either hold back too much or push too much. We just did our whole gobbler on homeboy that was putting mega huge dropping mega loads or whatever on his lawn, and I don't know. I just think that finding that sweet spot, I think we all can do better. And anyway, go on.
Dylan Miller said, home lawn, how long after a rye overseed would you wait to reseed? So it's going to be, think like Bermuda overseeding, right? Warm season area. How long would you wait to reseed? After about 3 days, we received a 3-inch rainfall and definitely displaced some seed. What did you say? I mean, 2 weeks. I'd say in 2 weeks, you're going to have a pretty good grasp as far as what's going on. And then you're good to go at that point.
Yeah, 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. What's going to come up?
Dylan said, starting to see some seed pop now, but I know I need to throw more out. Yeah, give it 2 weeks just to CYA, and then you'll be good to go. And here's the other thing. When you're look, I have overseeded baseball fields, 25, 30, maybe 50 pounds per 1,000.
Jesus.
I'm not gonna lie, it's sexy. I haven't gone as high as 50. maybe in some areas got an accidental 50, but boy, was it smoking good looking. When trying to limit POA spread, mulch or bag clippings doesn't matter. I mean, Andy, you can try and bag it. Good luck.
Battle
If
of
you if
attrition,
you
dude. You're and lose. That's just the way it goes.
if
You
you
know,
if you're
you gotta,
mowing with an Oric,
Here's the okay. Here's something that
or if you marry a
frequently comes
Dyson.
up. Yeah, here's what frequently comes up in my area, and this makes me want to throw things. And that is when people start
Don't
yammering
do it, Red.
about, oh, you need to bag clippings because of the weeds. Bull fucking shit. You know what you need to do if you have weeds? You know what you need to do if you have weeds? Put down an
Sell your
effective
house and move to Hawaii.
pre-emergent. Put down an effective pre-emergent. And in the case of something like POA, fall is literally the time to attack that POA. Because you know what fall is time for in a cool season turf with POA?
Or the fumicide.
Ethofumicate. Yep.
And you're gonna have,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing too. I want people to understand this with ethofumicate is that the likelihood that you're going to cause injury to your desirable turf is moderate to high. The likelihood that you're going to completely eradicate POA is extremely low. The idea is that you weaken, you weaken that POA to a point that your desirable grasses will outcompete, and you will bang up that POA, pretty good. But it is not a fail safe. It's not a foolproof plan, and yeah, got to manage expectations. No silver bullet, except
Yeah.
if you can get POA cure and you're on a golf course. Then it's
and
pretty darn good.
But barring that though, if we're talking about POA, as I said, I would not be fussing about picking up clippings. Instead, I'd be looking at fall progress and then spring progress to pick up whatever has overwintered and attempted to reemerge in the spring. Because you go look at that product labeling, it calls for a fall followed by a spring application when you're on a POA reduction program. It's not a one and done type of a deal. And you do, your fall, then your spring. And you know what else is beautiful about ethofumicate? It's also a good pre-emergent for crabgrass, certain broadleaf weeds, and nutsedge. So you're getting more than just POA control out of it. So it's doing a lot for you. So that's something to explore and consider, if you have POA that's at the level that is causing you anxiety.
Johnny Fescue said, "Is there any justification to polycoat potassium when applying Polyon NAP in spring? Would the coated K stick around until soil temps let it out? Never tried it. In a residential lawn setting, you couldn't.
Why?
I don't think there is a justification for that ever. That makes sense unless your residential lawn is literally made up of sand and like 24 inches of sand.
And even if it's made of sand, even
still
then,
gonna
even if it's
fluctuate.
made out of sand,
Mm.
even if it's made out of sand, though, what's going to happen is that, once you get grass growing on that sand, the roots themselves make up a substrate that has a very high cation exchange capacity because of the organic matter that the roots create. So that's going to stop a lot of that leaching through, and that's going to become a reservoir for nutrients because, guys, I have toyed with this idea for people that don't want to do regular fertilizer applications. You know what that idea was? Imagine applying 3 or 4 pounds of N as the 180-day Osmocote. And you know what Osmocote is? 111, where the N, the P, and the K is all in that polyurethane shell.
Yep.
I mean,
But talk about an expensive fertilizer application, because the last time I looked, Osmocote runs about 140 pound, $140, $150 a bag where I'm at. That's one 50-pound bag. Yeah, ain't cheap, Ryan. That stuff's ain't cheap.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Benzing said pH down with calcium sulfate 2. What? Are you asking, will pH go down with calcium sulfate? Because no, it will not.
No.
Calcium sulfate plus H2O, no. You're gonna break into calcium and sulfate ions on that, and no, you're not gonna drop pH with calcium sulfate. Again, sulfate is not an acidifier. Sulfur is the acidifier. Grind Up Organic. What's up, big dog? What's up? Hope everyone is doing well. I have a tall fescue Kentucky bluegrass mix. What do you think of adding perennial rye to it? Bad idea. And in Middle Tennessee, I would urge you to not do that. It's not to say that with one of these newer varieties that you can get away with it, especially if it's irrigated, for sure. But I personally wouldn't do it, but I don't. If you've got an area where you can test it first, I would recommend doing that. Test it somewhere before you put it into a customer's lawn, and then you know, if you see some success with it, then by all means, you know, good to go. But yeah, on that in that regard, I would definitely test it first. I just don't think it's a great idea here. Again, the July timeframe rolls around, it's man, it's going to get squirrely. What precipitation rate would you decide to shut down overseed tall turf type tall fescue, potentially 2-inch accumulation over an entire day, midnight to midnight? CEC is 2.5 to 4.5 at back, 8.5 front on a slope. What precipitation rate? I don't understand.
Rainfall, Matt. Rainfall.
Oh.
He's asking about rainfall, and here's what I can say about 2 inches over 24 hours. It depends on if that 2 inches is going to fall in like a half an hour, like how it often does in Hawaii, or if it actually is going to be 2 inches over an entire 24-hour period evenly. Because if we're talking about a turd floater, don't do it. But if we're talking about a steady, gentle rain, you're fine. You're good. It's just be aware of what I call flash flood conditions, because I am all too familiar with flash flood conditions. Don't rain for 6 months, and then all of a sudden we get 5 inches in an hour.
5 inches in an hour is actually the chapter in Sheila's autobiography when she moved to Hawaii.
I didn't tell you that.
Problem is the Ray was only halfway in.
Yeah. Okay. We have Don M said cool season lawn doesn't stay green for long after applying FERT. What should I look for? Man, if you're not applying, if you're not saying green long after applying a FERT, what should you look for? First, I'm going to say check your soil pH. That would probably be the quickest way to cause problems there. Nitrogen rates too can be a thing. Are you applying adequate nitrogen? Is it one of those things that, it's calling for, a half a pound of nitrogen, but you're applying a half pound of product, right? So that could be something to keep in mind. If you're looking at a soil test, is it a genuine, who is fucking around with this? Is that Spencer? Do I need to kill him?
Okay. No.
That's a joke.
Sands.
Is it Eric Sands? A what floater? A what floater?
Turf floater.
I messed up. Oh, again, check your sulfur levels too. So, looking at a soil test, if you're not responding to nitrogen, that is, according to Travis Shaddix, that would generate an immediate prompt for pulling a soil test, right? So again, yeah, I would, pH, nitrogen levels, sulfur levels are going to be the big things. Now, If
Mhm.
all of those come out to be fine, then bad news for you. It's your cultivar. You have a shit cultivar, and that
Ah.
happens sometimes. Our good friend up in Massachusetts, our attorney at large, Sir Jesse Bousquet, knows all about having shits cultivars, right? And it's a thing. So you know, rest in peace if you have to go that route. Brian said just did a reno. Wait, no, I skipped Phoenix. Phoenix Lawn Care said, what happens to you if you're a high pH of 7.12 and high on sulfur at 16.29? 16.29 of sulfur is not high. That's low.
You know what
That's
16.29 sounds like, Matt? That sounds like the scale that my
a
soil
my soil test.
and
Yep.
yeah, and it's like, you know what? Take whatever numbers my soil gives and use that for toilet paper. Yeah, that's what it's good for. Use it for toilet paper. And I can talk about that my soil test because you know our friend on Long Island got some wildly off soil test results from my soil. And so it's not like I'm making this up or picking on them. Their soil test results are not accurate.
Yep. If you are Phoenix, shoot that. If you're using a MySol test, I would just disregard that. That there's
just
no
start over.
reality of 16.29 parts per million of sulfur and think that's good. That's high. Never in a million years would that ever be the case.
Yep.
Brian did a reno on 6,000 square foot, seeing germination after 5 days, doing a plan that calls for next application 21 days after germination. Do I start counting now or wait till it all germinates?
Well,
Look, you're splitting hairs, in my opinion.
what's Ray say? What's Ray say? Grass doesn't have a fucking calendar.
Yeah,
Sorry to be
grass
crass.
doesn't have a damn calendar. So, you know what?
That's a
If you think you
good
need
statement.
to feed it. Because you see, grass gives 0 fucks about what time of day it is or what date it is. Grass don't care. What grass does
You
care
know what?
about
Oh, go ahead.
are the temperatures and moisture levels in your individual microclimate or area. So if the grass looks like it's growing and you think it needs fertilizer 21 days from now, you're probably not wrong. Because do you know what I've seen people mess themselves up on horribly? When they get fixed on dates. And then
Well,
that date causes them to make bad decisions.
so grass doesn't have a calendar, and the other axiom that you need to remember today is that Goat Ranch golf courses and True Green, the cash register doesn't care if it's raining, boys and girls. So get out
Yep.
there, hit that sales goal.
Mhm.
You check the show before the show. I got all kinds of stories about that. I think we have come to the end of it. We are not going to be able to do an after show tonight, but we'll see. We'll see what ends up shaking out over the next little bit. If you have any questions, check it out. Patreon.com/burn and return. Especially if you're a lawn care operator and you're in the field, you got questions. You want somewhere to go to that's going to give you some information that is not going to correlate with if you buy my shit is the only way to get green grass, then chances are we would be a good resource for you. Again, patreon.com/burn and return. I think you can get in for like $4 a month, $5 a month, something like that. It's stupid cheap for access to not just us, but the community at large of people that are uniquely, incredibly interested in learning more, and that is from the most active of members to the non-activist of members. Without a doubt, top to bottom, every member wants to learn, and that includes us. I always said that if there was a day that goes by that I didn't learn something new in this industry, I would leave. And that still stands. Every day that passes, I learn something new, and that's my infatuation with it. We want to share that with you as well too. Patreon.com/burn and return. Other than that, we're headed out. We've got life shit to do tomorrow. My son turns 11, and yeah, we're gonna have a big time. Love y'all. Bye.